some analysis on this. I'm very pleased to be joined now on the programme by H A Hellyer. He's a Middle East specialist at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Good afternoon to you, sir. Thanks very much for making the time.
Hello, good afternoon.
I'd like to get your reaction, first of all, just to the news that this Palestinian government is to resign. What kind of change might this bring?
I'm not sure we should expect terribly much change. The Palestinian Authority doesn't have authority, to put it bluntly, over much of what would be required in order for it to govern effectively in, again, the parts of the West Bank that it apparently has authority over. This is an occupation by the Israelis. It has been since 1967. It's split into several different areas just in the West Bank, with limited authority and, of course, no sovereignty in those areas. So I think it's very clear that all of the pressure that has been brought to bear on the PA, particularly from the United States, but also elsewhere, has resulted in large sections of the PA wondering what the heck they're doing there.
Well, the Palestinian Prime Minister, the outgoing Prime Minister, Mohammad Shtayyeh, talking about the need now for Palestinian national unity talks. Does that mean the PA is talking to Hamas?
I would not be surprised at all if the PA were talking to Hamas, because Hamas isn't disappearing from the equation. I think even Israeli military experts have been very clear over the past 4 months that even if they manage to severely diminish Hamas's military capacity, which I think they are more than capable of doing and have done tremendously, that doesn't mean that Hamas disappears from the political field of the Palestinian reality. And I think the overwhelming majority of the international community realizes that. Whether we like it or not is another question. But I don't think that anybody should be silly enough to think that it will simply disappear or be extinguished.
But surely major actors like the United States would not accept the idea of a Palestinian national unity government in some way involved in the governing of Gaza after the end of this war that would include Hamas.
Well, they may want to accept or may not want to accept, but let's be clear. The United States hasn't seen fit to use its leverage to get their own partners, i.e. the Israelis, to end this war and to accept a two-state solution and. I mean, there are numerous things that the United States has said that it wants Israel to do, but refuses to use any leverage in order for them to do so. The Biden administration has made it clear for months that they want this conflict to stop. Actually, over the past couple of months, it's been made very clear that they want this conflict to stop. But unfortunately, it's also been very clear that they refuse to actually use any leverage in order for the conflict to stop. So I think any suggestion that the United States has some sort of veto power here really needs to be put to the test when it comes to the Israelis, first and foremost.
And as to the Palestinians themselves, I'm interested in what kind of reaction this news today may be getting among Palestinians, particularly in the occupied West Bank, because Mahmoud Abbas is really the figure that is deeply unpopular here, and it seems that he probably will stay in place now.
I think he will stay in place, but I think Palestinians more generally, and of course you'd have to go to the West Bank and to Gaza if you were able to have reporters go into Gaza without being escorted by the Israelis. I think you ought to go and ask them because, quite frankly, I think Palestinians more generally are feeling incredibly frustrated. The last 4 months has seen a huge bombardment and destruction of Gaza, the continuation and occupation that seems unending, the spreading of settlements in the West Bank. Several thousand more were announced over the last few days alone. These are all illegal under international law. Even the United States has said that and reconfirmed that over the last couple of days. So I think this is just adding to yet one more trauma that they have.
Let's talk perhaps a little bit then about the latest coming out of Gaza. I'm interested in where you think things stand this Monday as to the idea of a full-scale Israeli incursion into Rafah. Israel, of course, has been saying for weeks that it will do that despite international condemnation. It hasn't begun yet. Do you think it will?
I think it will, and I think it'll be catastrophic. And I think that we are being telegraphed very slowly with a war crime. And I mean that very seriously. The concerns among the security establishment in the UK and in the West more generally, of which I am a part, is extremely concerned that if you send in a force like the IDF into such a severely condensed and huge numbers of civilians in a very, very small place such as Rafah city, then it is unavoidable that you will see a mass casualty event, which is a massacre by any other name. And the Israelis are telling us we are going in. And I don't think that we should really be taking at face value the suggestion that there will be, quote unquote, an evacuation plan that will defend and protect civilians. And I want your viewers to recognize Israel is in occupation of the Gaza Strip. It has been in occupation of the Gaza Strip since 1967. That occupation has never ended. And as a result, under international law, as the occupying power, they have responsibility to protect the civilian population in that area. They abrogated that responsibility numerous times over the last 4 months, with around 30,000 people dead over the last few months. And I'm very concerned that if they go into Rafah, as they say they will, and I have complete confidence that they mean what they say in this regard, that we will see many more people die. And they will not be Hamas fighters. They will be civilians. They will be women and children. You asked about the situation in Gaza. We're seeing children starve to death. We literally have children starving to death in Gaza. And this is on the international community to put an end to. It is entirely possible for it to end today if the White House wants it to end.
But let me ask you that very directly then. What more can the White House do to stop this incursion into Rafah taking place?
Let's be clear here. They've done nothing at all thus far. What we've seen are statements from the White House. We haven't seen any leverage being used from the White House. And on the contrary, we've also seen political interventions at the UN in order to protect Israel from UNSC Council resolutions. So it's not that the White House is sort of throwing their hands up in the air after having actually done anything. What the White House has done, what the Biden administration has done for the last 4 months has been about talking. It hasn't been about using leverage. The leverage that it has in terms of the arms deals that it has, in terms of the aid that it provides Israel, in terms of all of the political support that it gives Israel internationally, especially at the United Nations. None of that has been touched. None of that has been even suggested to have been touched. Okay, so there hasn't been anything that the Biden administration has done in terms of actual use of leverage. And if it's serious about ending this conflict, then that's where we need to start.
Is there political pressure on Biden, do you think, to do that, to impose sanctions on Israel, to cut some of that funding towards the Israeli army? Is any of that seriously part of those conversations in Washington?
In Washington, no. I think what you have in Washington is a begrudging awareness that the majority of the Democratic base has been for a ceasefire for quite some time. There's a consideration within the Democratic Party that Biden may lose this coming election at the end of the year to Donald Trump, precisely because of how he's conducted the United States' role in this war, because there will be constituencies where this will affect his support tremendously. But I don't think that the administration is seriously considering. I wasn't even talking about sanctions, but simply talking about the removal of certain arms deals and aid. I think would be tremendously welcome in de-escalating the situation and ending the war.